Welcome to BhagavatSanga program. This is our Srimad Bhagavatam program, and devotees read from Bhagavatam. They learn the verses and their realizations. So every week we have devotees presenting the verses and the realization. Currently, we are reading Lord Brahma's Prayers to Sri Krishna. These are from Srimad Bhagavatam from Canto 10, Chapter 14. The verses are from 1 to 40. Today we have two very wonderful devotees, mother and daughter, and they will be presenting today. So with that, we welcome Shikha Mataji and Vandya. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Vandya.
So thank you, Mataji, and thank you, Prabhu, for giving us this opportunity. We are going to start with invocation prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjan Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayanam Namaskrityam Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमे श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनकारणम्.
Hare Krishna devotees, today we are going to be talking about the prayers of Lord Brahma.
We cannot hear you.
Okay. So first we are going to narrate the story about the Brahma Vimohan Leela, and then we will do a summary of the prayers of Lord Brahma. Then we will have a detailed view of Brahma's prayers, and then we will have our conclusion. Now I will narrate the story of the stealing of boys and calves by Brahma. So once upon a time, Lord Krishna and the cowherd boys wanted to go to eat lunch in the forest. And so they got their lunch and they gathered their calves and head to the forest. After encountering Aghasura, which Krishna easily killed, they sat down at the bank of Yamuna, which is also called Keshika. Then they let their cows roam freely in the grasses while they ate their lunch. All the cowherd boys enjoyed eating face to face with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. While they were eating, they didn't realize that their cows went. And 1 second they were there, and the next second they were gone. They couldn't see a single cow in sight, and they were so scared for their own safety, and they cried out, Krishna, Krishna. Krishna, out of his compassion, did not want the cowherd boys to leave their lunch. So he said, I will look for the calves while you guys eat your lunch. So he went looking for the calves, but he couldn't find them. He looked in bushes and mountain holes and caves, but he couldn't find them. And Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, nothing can be hidden from him. He knew that Brahma had stolen the calves because while Krishna was killing Aghasura, where all the demigods were watching, Brahma was there too. And he was surprised that he knew that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he was surprised that Krishna like as a little boy, could kill such a mighty demon. And then he decided to steal the boys and the calves to witness more of the Lord's amazing pastimes. And so then he stole the cows, and when Krishna was not with the cowherd boys, he thought, why not steal the cowherd boys as well? So he stole the cowherd boys, and then Krishna came back, seeing that the cowherd boys also were not there. And he thought, how will I go back to Vrindavan? Because I can't go to Vrindavan without the cowherd boys and the calves, because the mothers and fathers will be so aggrieved. So then he thought, I can expand myself into the missing cowherd boys and calves. And so then he expanded himself, and surrounded by all of his expansions, he headed into Vrindavan. Then there, usually in Vrindavan, all of the villagers, they love Krishna a lot more than their own children. But today, they felt equal love for their children because they were Krishna as to their own children, to Krishna. And then this happened for a year. And one day, Balaram and Krishna were tending the cows on Govardhan Hill. And then they saw that there was the elderly villagers were tending the older cows on top of the Govardhan Hill, and Krishna and Balaram were tending the calves on the pasturing ground of Vrindavan. And then seeing the cows, their heart melted with affection, and they ran down the path of the rocky path of the path down from Govardhan Hill down to the pasturing ground. And seeing this, Balaram was so shocked to like what happened. And then Krishna explained on how Brahma stole the calves and the cowherd boys, and how Krishna expanded himself into all of the missing cowherd boys and calves. And after this, Brahma returned in a moment, and 1 year of our life is one moment for Brahma. And so then, to prove that Krishna was expansions for all of the cows and the cowherd boys, Krishna expanded himself into the four-armed forms of Vishnu. And so Brahma saw all four forms of Vishnu everywhere. And Brahma realized that he was like playing with fire, and he offered his prayers to Lord Krishna. Yeah. So basically, the main points is that first, Krishna with the cowherd boys. Impersonalists always get Brahman realization, which is not as high as going to Golok at the end of your life, but devotees, they get the personal association of Lord, which is better than any type of Brahman realization you can get. And the second one is the killing of Agasura. And that when Krishna saw that his cowherd boys were going into the mouth of Agasura, he went for the safety of his devotees. And Krishna shows a lot of mercy on all the demons because he liberates them even though they've done atrocious behaviors and they pretty much hate Krishna. And next, Brahma stole the cows and boys. And as I mentioned, all the villagers of Vrindavan wish they could have sons like Krishna, even though they really like their own children. Through this pastime of Krishna, Krishna fulfilled the desires of his own devotees, and even a great Vedic scholar, Brahma, the creator of the Vedas, can be bewildered. And lastly, Krishna's compassion on everyone, including Brahma, who Krishna easily forgave, and Agasura, who he liberated still, even though he harmed and almost killed so many of his friends.
Vandya. So Brahma Vandya recited the story and the pastime very nicely. And once the curtain of Yog Maya was removed, Brahma could realize his constitutional position and also the position of Lord Krishna. And at that point of time, he realized his folly and he repented from the deepest core of his heart. And he offered these prayers at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And he asked for forgiveness, and these are very powerful prayers with some very key messages for all of us on the spiritual path. So we're going to talk about these quickly and then go through some of these in detail. So Brahma was enamored, and in this picture is beautiful depiction of that, by the beauty of Lord Krishna. And he said that this beauty is above anything which we see in Vaikuntha. And just like Vandya said that Lord Brahma is the creator of the Vedas and most knowledgeable person, but he talked about how the opulence of Lord is beyond his words and mind and knowledge. So he talks about Krishna as being the Supreme Lord. And then the message which we also get from these prayers is that we cannot achieve God through the speculative knowledge or austerity or by performing yoga. The easiest path is the devotional service to the Lord, because then we get the personal realization of the personal form of the God. And some of these paths actually are very difficult and actually deviate us to the wrong direction. So the third message which we get is how should we be behaving as a devotee to be eligible for mercy of the Lord? And this is where Brahmaji talks about in shloka number 8, three critical things which we need to always remember and imbibe in our life: being earnestly waiting for the mercy of the Lord. The second thing which we need to do is being patiently enduring whatever sufferings we get because of our own sinful karmas. And the third thing is offering our obeisances to the Lord through our heart, through our body, through our words, through our mind. The next one is number 4, about the inconceivable potency of Lord. Lord is capable of doing anything. And even though he was a 5-year-old during this Brahma Vimohan Leela, I mean, God is so potent that by any part of his body, by limbs, he can eat, he can see from his hands, and not only from his own body, but he can pretty much do anything which he would like to desire through any of the Vishnu forms or through any Jivatma. So that's another key message here. And then I think this is what Brahmaji felt before the prayers, that, hey, this is 5-year-old boy, can he kill, like when they were saying Agasura? But Lord's birth and his form is not material. And then he goes into many more details of why God is coming, which we will look in detail shortly. And the last one, which is a very strong message actually for all of us, is he desires to be born in Vrindavan, and he desires to be covered by the dust of the holy feet of the devotees of Vrindavan. So that's in a nutshell some high-level key messages from prayers of Lord Brahma. And we are going to just go into some of the key messages now. So like we were saying in the prayer, Krishna showed as extension 4 Vishnu forms, where thousands of cows and cowherd boys turned into the 4 Vishnu form. But here, when Brahmaji is offering his prayers, he is offering his prayers to the 2-armed Krishna. And he's saying that Krishna is the absolute Lord and the most worshipable Lord. And he describes very beautifully, this is how the prayers actually start, talking about the transcendental beauty of the Lord, where he's talking about how he has a morsel of food in his left hand, which is rice and some yogurt, and how God has a flute tucked to his belt, and how he has a cow herding stick pressed and a buffalo horn pressed in his left arm, he talks about how God is all decorated with just flowers, wild flowers and minerals from the forest. And even in that, he is much more opulent looking than anything in Vaikuntha. And then, like he talked about, that God's opulence, even though Brahmaji is so knowledgeable, father of Vedas and Adi Kavi, but his opulence is beyond comprehension of Brahmaji. And then he addresses in these prayers Krishna as Gunatma, which means that Krishna is a soul which has unlimited qualities. So next, which he talks about, like we were discussing in the summary, that we cannot achieve God by speculative knowledge, by our physical strength or our mental faculties, or how verbose or great we are in our speech. God can be achieved only by devotional service. And then he talked about how our devotee is and how devotee serves God with whatever they have. So with our body, the devotees serve by paying obeisances through their mind and head. And then in terms of our talking faculties, the words, so the devotees are using those words for praising the words of Lord in form of Bhagavad Gita, the stories of Lord in form of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then also praising the devotees who are working on the noble cause of preaching the words of Lord. And through their mind, they're serving by remembering Krishna always and engaging in listening to his pastimes. And what Brahmaji talks about is that how all of these pastimes are transcendental pastimes, and they fill the devotees who have surrendered to Krishna with ecstasy. And Brahmaji then is praying to always keep him on the devotional path and to take him as his eternal devotee always. And very important point here is that here the devotional path which we get is based on mercy of Krishna himself and also his devotees. So this is what Brahmaji talks about, and there is a prayer for all of us to be in devotional service. And then this is shloka number 8, one of my favorite ones, where they talk about how can we be eligible for the mercy of the Lord. And basically the key message is when earnestly waiting for mercy of the Lord. And what it really means is that we have to stay in Krishna consciousness. And then also we have to stay under the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. And when we do that, the mercy of the Lord dawns on us. And then we sometimes, and I know we sometimes start deviating from the path, and we start losing patience when hardship comes in our life. And what they talk about is that these hardships are basically some results of our past karmic reactions, or there is grace even in this, because in order for us to reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we have to go through a purification process. And really these difficulties which we face in our life are only a curative exercise which Lord is doing for our benefit to bring us on the path, to help with our purification. And just like we were talking about it, we need to continue to offer our obeisances to the Lord through our body, through our mind, through our words. And here we have some great examples of our Srila Prabhupada, who offered his life for God's cause, Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruv Maharaj as well. So here Brahmaji actually talked about that how Krishna has inconceivable potency, and how he looked like an ordinary 5-year-old boy, but did magical things like killing Aghasura and so many other demons, and having wonderful pastimes with the devotees. And then another example of his inconceivable potency is that he just expanded himself into so many cows and calves and cowherd boys, and matched exactly their personality traits and their physical looks, and nobody could make out what's happening. And how then he expanded into several thousands of four-handed Vishnus, and then again came back, lifting that Yogmaya, and then came back into just his normal self, a 5-year-old boy, again chit-chatting and having picnic with his cowherd boys, as if nothing has happened. And then showed Brahma that he is the supreme absolute truth. So here the message which Brahmas Prayers is giving is that God has inconceivable potency. He protects his devotees. We need to stay on the path and continue to have faith in Krishna, no matter where we are. And Lord's birth is not material, because sometimes we feel, and that's how Brahmaji felt during Brahma Vimohan Leela. He's just 5-year-old. But once Brahmaji realized through Krishna's mercy the original position of Krishna in his own constitutional position, he basically then talked in the prayers about purpose of Lord's visit. So he is coming here to defeat the ego which demons have. He's coming here, like Vandya was saying, to fulfill the desires of the devotees. And in terms of his inconceivable potency, like we were talking about, so he comes in many different forms. In terms of God, he comes like Vamandev. In terms of sages, he comes like Parshuram. In terms of animals, he comes like a boar, fish as aquatics life. So the purpose of Lord's visit basically is to remove evil and have wonderful pastimes with his devotees. And all these pastimes are transcendental, and Kartik month is coming, and all the pastimes which Krishna had in Vrindavan, they say are very potent and bigger than what some people experience in Vaikuntha. So we should not take them material. And then the spiritual potency, and Brahmaji uses some very beautiful words in these prayers to just describe some of those. So he talks about Bhuman, which means that he is wonderfully great. He talks about being Bhagwan, which means that he has a form, and it's a beautiful form, and he is in his abode where he does beautiful transcendental pastimes. And for all of us, Paramatma, that he is within us as a super soul among all the atoms, and witnessing and sanctioning the activities which we all do. And because he has so many different personalities, he is also called Yogeshwara. So difficult to understand the spiritual energy and how it acts, but that's how Brahmaji explained. And then also because he is God and he's the original God. So here he is the source from which all the universes came. And he describes them very beautifully, like Adya. So he is the original Lord. He's Purna, so he's full and complete. So even though he seems like a 5-year-old small boy, but because of his inconceivable potency and indestructible mortality, he's complete. He is Ajasra Sukha. And what this Ajasra Sukha means is unobstructed happiness, which means that the things which we face, he doesn't face. And he's Amrita, which means that he's immortal, which means that like we go through these 6 stages, but God doesn't go through those stages. He's ever youthful. He doesn't go through the middle age, and he doesn't die because he is the Adi Purusha. So he always exists. It's not like that he takes birth and then dwindles and dies. So these are a few things which he talked about from material birth perspective. And then he talks about the glorious position of residents of Vrindavan. And if you see how the story started when Vandya was reciting that Krishna just took thousands of cowherd boys and calves for a picnic. So Brahmaji realized that even though he's so knowledgeable, but he was bewildered. But the residents of Vrindavan, the Gopas and Gopis, have personal association of the Lord because they have unalloyed love and devotion for the God. And he aspires to be a devotee and also have the mercy of devotees of the residents of Vrindavan. And his sincere prayer is actually to take birth in Vrindavan and be born as a blade of grass. But what is also important, and that's something which we learn in Prahlad Maharaj's prayers as well, that I want to be servant of the servant of the servant. That's what Prahlad Maharaj's prayers was. And here also, Brahmaji is aspiring not for personal association of the God, but he is aspiring to be covered by the dust of lotus feet of all the residents of Vrindavan and having their association and mercy. And this is Brahmaji's prayers to always continue to be on the devotional path, serving the Lord. And then in terms of concluding the prayers of forgiveness, and it's really touching how deeply Brahmaji felt this from the core of his heart. Sometimes we just say sorry for the sake of it. I mean, he thought that he is actually one of the demons, like Brahma Rakshasa, coming from Satyaloka, because he actually obstructed the beautiful pastime which Krishna was having with the residents of Vrindavan, whom he really respects. And what he's talking about here is that because he was born under mode of passion, and he thought that he can actually trick Krishna, and he was blinded by the mode of ignorance, and he wants this atheism to be removed from him so that he can continue to understand his constitutional position of being the servant of the Lord. And just like a mother keeps the child in the womb and child keeps kicking, he's asking for forgiveness, and he says, Lord, it's up to you whether you punish me mercifully or you give me forgiveness, but please accept me as your servant. And here he gives a very wonderful message that even when God is giving us a punishment, that is basically for our own benefit, so that our false ego gets defeated and we continue to be on the devotional path. And Brahmaji felt that he's unfit to stay in Vrindavan at that point of time. And he just prayed to the Lord that he may go back to his loka and resume his devotional service, so that God can also continue his transcendental loving service and pastime with the residents of Vrindavan. So this is what our Lord Brahma's prayers were, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually felt that these are these are principles which are concluding on the path of devotional service, and may that becomes the foundation of our own service as well. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Shikha Mataji and Vandya. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mataji, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful class presentation by Vandya and Shikha Mataji. It was wonderfully presented and covered so many important points. Vandya actually very nicely narrated the pastime of Brahma Vimohana Lila, and covered many important points about how, unlike the impersonalist, the devotees of the Lord get the personal association of the Lord. Krishna is so merciful by nature. He liberated even the demon Agasura. Krishna fulfilled the desire of the Rajvasis, where they had the desire that Krishna be their son, and Krishna fulfilled that. Like for 1 year, Krishna was their son. And then Shikha Mataji very elaborately, very nicely in detail explained so many points of Lord Brahma's prayers, Brahma's realization of his mistake, and then how devotional service is the highest path and how other paths are very difficult. And what is the eligibility of a devotee to attain the Lord's mercy? Mataji mentioned actually 3 points, right? One should have the earnestly wanting the Lord's mercy. One should patiently wait for the Lord's mercy and offer obeisances to the Lord, and how the Lord has inconceivable potencies, like a 5-year boy, it's hard to understand, but it's inconceivable potencies of the Lord, that Krishna can do anything. And then how one should have the desire to be born in Vrindavan, aspiring to be the servant of the Lord. That should be the mood. And then very important also, forgiveness. The mood, it should be to accept, to be always to pray to the Lord, to be accepted as the Lord's servant, of course, servant of the Lord, and accept the reward or the punishment as the Lord's mercy. That's very important. And of course, Mataji covered some other important points as well. I'm just, in the interest of time, I'm just giving the highlight here. Thank you very much, Mataji and Vandya, for the wonderful presentation. Very nicely done, very clear. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Thank you,